Good morning. Today I am going to read Feathers by Jacqueline Woodson. This recording is made for educational purposes only. I do not own the rights to this book. I will begin in the middle of chapter 4. The other nice thing about Miss Johnson is she wants you to understand stuff. I mean, she doesn't just teach us, and if we don't get it, she keeps on moving. She really cares about us understanding things, and she'll take a real long time explaining something until she's sure everybody's got it. Sometimes that's a little bit boring if you already understand it and she's still explaining it. But that doesn't happen with me because I'm usually the last one to get it. The things I don't understand the most are science, math, grammar, and geography. I understand independent reading and journal time, and I understand the story part of writing, but not things like diagramming a sentence or semicolons. Anyway, that's why when Ray Ray said what he said, Miss Johnson stopped taking attendance to ask him about it. She wanted herself and all of us to understand. What are the two things wrong with it, Ray Ray? And that's another thing I like about Miss Johnson. Ray Ray's name is really Raymond Rayson, but he decided he wanted everyone to call him Ray Ray. When he told Miss Johnson that, she jumped right into calling him the name he wanted. Everybody calls me Franny, and so does Miss Johnson. But even if I would have said, "Call me Floyd Joy McCoy from now on, Miss Johnson," my name would be Floyd Joy McCoy. I guess it's strange that nobody ever calls me by my first name, Abigail, or even Abby. I guess it's because Sean can almost say Franny. It sounds kind of crooked, like somebody saying it underwater, but we know what he's saying. And maybe that's why it stuck, because of him. Ray Ray leaned back in his chair. He was wearing this big shirt that said, "Black is beautiful," with a black hand making a black power fist underneath the words. The shirt was too big for Ray Ray. He's real skinny, so when he wears big clothes, mostly you see the clothes, not Ray Ray. He slouched down in his seat and just about disappeared into that big shirt. "Well, first of all," he said, "Jesus wasn't a boy. He was like God's son, but not a man either. Like a thing type person. Like a spirit guy." Miss Johnson and the rest of us just looked at him. "And second of all, he wasn't white. He was like spirit colored or something." "What's spirit colored?" his friend Chris asked. "I never heard of no spirit color." I could see Ray Ray's little head inside his big shirt. He was frowning. "Like the color of air, brother man. You know, like no color." "When those cats put nails in him, he bled though," somebody else said. "What color was his blood?" Ray Ray shrugged. "Right on, my brother man. I feel what you're saying. Blood is red no matter who it's coming out of. But that ain't where I'm going, you see. That kid ain't Jesus is all I'm saying." "Say, brother," the kid said, which was jive talk for, "I agree with you." "Say, brother," I signed underneath my desk, then looked down at my hands. I had a pockmark on the center of each palm left over from the time I had chickenpox. The marks were small and reddish-brown. Sometimes when I was thinking about something real hard, they started itching. Maybe in another world, somebody would have thought they were nail holes. I don't know. Mama lost one baby before I was born. Her name was Lila, and she died when she was a month old. Something about her lungs. Something about her blood. We don't talk about her much. But there are pictures. Sometimes Mama kisses my palms and calls me God's gift. I wondered what the inside of Jesus boy's hands looked like. I wonder if his mama kissed them and called him silly names. Of course, when I looked up, he was staring at me again. Oh, big eyes. "He's not saying he's Jesus, right?" Ray Ray asked. He's saying that that's like some nickname. I know this Spanish guy named Jesus, but it's pronounced the Spanish way. Not like the real guy. This kid ain't saying he's the real guy, right? I mean, how's he going to be God's son and be in Miss Johnson's class? No offense, Miss Johnson, but even if that Jesus boy was spirit-colored, he wouldn't be coming to Price. If he was really God's son, he'd probably go to a private school. Like where? Marable said. The Casey school closed. There's not any private schools on this side of the highway. If there was one, I'd be going to it. Or like Catholic school? Somebody else said. Someplace with some religion, right? I saw Miss Johnson smile a bit. I don't think that's what Jesus is saying about himself, everyone. Are you? Miss Johnson and everybody else looked at the Jesus boy. He didn't move or shake his head or anything, just sat there, staring off. Are you? Ray Ray asked him. You aren't saying you're like God's son, are you? I don't think it matters, Miss Johnson said. What matters is, aren't we all God's children? Samantha said quietly. She looked around the room, taking us all in. Each of you, she said, is a true child of God. She turned to the Jesus boy. Maybe some are truer than others. Ray Ray just looked at her and shrugged. Jesus don't belong in this room is all I'm saying. And that cat saying he's He stopped talking and stared at the Jesus boy and frowned. Then we all looked at him. He had his hands on his desk and was looking down at him. I saw a tear fall onto his pale hand and then another one, but he wiped them away real quick. And then he wiped them away real quick. I heard myself saying, he's crying, Miss Johnson. The Jesus boy is crying. Dag, Ray Ray said. I didn't mean to make him cry. I swear, Miss Johnson, I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just saying, I'm not crying, Jesus boy said real fast, shooting me a look that was so evil I couldn't believe it came from his face. Are you all right? Miss Johnson said, her hand on his shoulder. Yeah, I'm okay, the Jesus boy said, his voice soft again, so soft that maybe some of the kids didn't hear him. I lived on the other side of the highway already, the Jesus boy said softly. He kept looking down at his hands, like he was talking to them, like he was talking to himself. My family didn't belong there. He looked up and around at each one of us. It felt like everything stopped. There weren't tears in his eyes, but they were sad. My daddy said it would be better here, he said, almost whispering it. He said people would be, you know, nice to me. He looked down at his hands again. After a minute, he put his head down on his desk and sighed. We all stared at him, and Miss Johnson bent down and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, and she put her hand on his back and led him out of the room. As he walked out the door, I could see that his face was all squinched up, but his hands were just flat and calm, hanging down at his sides. Then he sniffed, and his face just sort of sagged. I put my head down on my desk and closed my eyes. Is he some sort of crybaby or something? I heard someone ask. Nah, I heard Ray Ray say softly. You heard the brother, man. He's just like a little bit lost. It bees like that sometime. Right on, I heard somebody else say. It bees like that. Usually, when Miss Johnson left the room, we lost our minds with talking and jumping around and throwing things at each other. Ray Ray always acted the craziest. He could do standing backflips and usually did them in the aisle. But that day, he just sat quietly in his seat, rolling his pencil slowly back and forth across his desk. That day, the room was completely quiet. It was like we were all glued to our seats. It was like somebody had come into the room and gently lifted our tongues right on out of our mouths. Part 2. Chapter 5. When Mama's first baby died, she and Daddy started going to a small church around the corner from our house. She said the first time she sat down in that church, all this beautiful light came pouring in through the one stained glass window above where the pastor stood. Mama said she watched the light, and the light had so many things in it: color and dust, hard and soft patches of sun. She said she sat there and leaned into that light, and it warmed her and helped her understand. And what I understood, Mama said, was that the baby would always be with us. Somewhere, somehow, when we needed her. They had named the baby girl Lila, after my mother's great-grandmother. Mama said she saw Lila in that light, reaching out a tiny brown hand to her and smiling. I don't know if I believe in miracles. I think things happen and we need to believe in them. But sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'll catch Lila smiling at me, her head covered with jet black curls, her lip curling up over her tiny toothless mouth, her tiny hands reaching. Chapter 6. At the corner of North Conduit and East Bay Road, there's a little stream that gets deeper when there's a lot of rain or snow. In the winter, the thinnest sheet of ice freezes over it, and there's always a rainbow bouncing off that ice. Me and Samantha walked down North Conduit the way we'd done for as long as I can remember. The only thing different about it was how quiet we were. Samantha stared down at the snow, taking careful steps through it. "Franny," Samantha said after a long time had gone by. We were at the creek now. From here, Samantha would go right down East Bay Road to her house, and I would continue on North Conduit, walking with the highway to the left of me to my apartment building. There were some dark clouds over our heads. What if that boy really is Jesus? What if Jesus did come here, to where we live? Jesus who? Jesus. That's who. God's Son. Think about it, Franny. In the Bible, he just showed up and then miracles started happening. People started rising up from the dead and eating bread that was his body and drinking wine that was his blood, and yuck, I said, covering my ears. Yuck on the blood wine. Yuck on the body bread. Yuck on the dead walking back into the world after we went and had a whole expensive funeral for them. Samantha stared at me. "Listen to me," she said, trying to sound like a very patient grown-up. If there was a world for Jesus to need to walk back into, wouldn't this one be it? We stopped walking. "There's a war going on." "Yeah," I said, "and it's been going on since the 60s, and before that there was one in the 40s and the 20s and the 10s. There's always a war going on somewhere. How come Jesus didn't choose one of those? Or how come he didn't come back and stop this one all those years ago when it started? And plus, Jesus wasn't a boy." "People starving," Samantha said, ignoring me and counting off her fingers. "Dust Bowl depression," I said, counting off my own. "Hurricanes, tornadoes. Dorothy, Toto." Samantha rolled her eyes at me and started walking again. "You think I'm kidding around? And when did you start listening in social studies anyway?" "It sinks in when I sleep, I guess." I didn't say anything else, just started walking beside her. Samantha's father preached at his own church, One People Baptist, over near the mall. Mama called it a fire and brimstone church because either you were holy or you weren't. Either you were going to burn in eternal fire or go to heaven. There wasn't some in between. "I'm neither holy enough nor bad enough to go to his church," Mama said. But every Sunday, Samantha was there, sitting right up front with her mother, listening to every single word. Most Sundays, I could find 100 excuses not to go to church with my parents. Even Sean got up to go more than me. My grandmother went to 2 churches on Sunday. In the morning, she went to church with my parents. And in the afternoon, she went to a different church, one she'd been going to forever. During the week, she read her Bible, so it was always in her bag, and sometimes she took it out and tapped me on the head with it, saying, "Maybe the information in here will get into your head that way." And if I decided I wanted to say something dumb in front of her like, "Jesus Christ," after I stubbed my toe or something, then the tap wasn't so soft. Wasn't soft at all. As a matter of fact, my grandmother could knock you good on your head with the Bible if she wanted to. Once I'd even said, "I don't think God meant for his good book to be a weapon, Grandma." She chucked me a good one and said, "Isn't no weapon, just what I have handy, that's all." Even with all the church going happening around me, I never thought of Jesus as being much of anything. I mean, if people needed to believe he was God's son and he walked the earth and blah, 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 I wasn't going to tell them they were wrong or right about their ideas about things. I was just going to do like I did with my grandmother, nod and hold my tongue and duck if the Bible came flying. Samantha lifted her book bag onto her shoulder. I mean, it's all so strange, don't you think? He came to our school in the middle of the year. And it's like he came from nowhere. She looked at me. He came from across the highway, Samantha. He said so. It's still strange, the way he just showed up. Who crosses the highway to come here to live? Nobody. It had to be for some reason. He said his family didn't belong there. Jesus wandered the earth the same way, looking for a place where he could be accepted. How surreal is that? I tried to find the word surreal in my mental vocabulary bank, where Miss Johnson had said we should say vocabulary words so that we could grow up and have rich brains. But it wasn't there. Miss Johnson said the only way you can deposit a word in your bank is by committing it to memory. I hadn't deposited surreal. I guess I must have spent it somewhere. Yeah, it is surreal, I guess, I said. Real surreal. You know what the shortest verse in the Bible is? Samantha said. Her Bible bank was probably as rich as her vocabulary bank. Well, do you? Samantha asked again. I shrugged. You know I'm not church-going, Sam. I can't even remember half my schoolwork most days. How am I gonna know what's in the Bible? All I know is it's just the right size for Grandma to smack against my head every time she gets a need to. That's for sure. I'd laughed, but Samantha didn't. Samantha was on my side about the Bible thing. She even said to Grandma once, "That's not the Lord's purpose for that book, Miss Wright." But my grandmother just said, "Thank you, Miss Samantha." It goes, Jesus wept. Isn't that strange? I shrugged. People cry sometimes. Even teachers and moms and stuff. Even you and me, I said. Samantha looked at me. Yeah, but if Abigail Francesca Wright Barnes cried, it wouldn't get put into a book that millions of billions of people would read. Maybe it would. If I did it in front of the right person at the right time, I could be inspiring. Maybe not a whole lot of people know me now, but it's just all so surreal, Samantha said again. You wake up one day and it's wintertime and there's snow falling. You wake up another day and there's a new boy in your class with wild hair named Jesus. That's not his real name, though. Jesus wept, she said again. Isn't that strange?